sex. Police orphanage and jail only makes them worse. Children must grow in the light of true love.
$1,000 in their pocket can go to the parlor, and therefore the parlor person could get some money, and then the parlor person will go buy another place and hire somebody else, hire a small builder to extend the parlor, and the small builder will get some money, and the small builder have to hire a laborer on the project, and the laborer gets some money. And that is how an economy works, and that is how you get growth, because you have different rounds of spending, and lots of people benefit in that way. But if instead of $100 being spent like that, most of that money is going into the pocket of one or two people who are getting the bribes and be corrupt, that money circulating in their bank account is not circulating throughout the economy. That is one of the problems that we have. So even though a lot of money is being spent in the country, it is not circulating. And big business people have said that to me, and small business people have said that to me. Big and small, Indo and Afro, French Creole business people across the board have been saying, David, something is wrong with this country right now. And it comes down to corruption, nepotism, patronage, and so on. Party affiliation. And then bad decisions are getting made. So you put square peg in round hole. Yes? Because the person was a loyal party member. Not competent, you know, but loyal. So you pick people to be put on boards because they're loyal, and then they make the wrong decisions. And when they make the wrong decisions, the company suffers and everything goes bad. And with respect to my colleague from the PNM, that was what happened in the PNM days too. Because Petrotrin was almost brought to his knees because of Malcolm Jones and the nonsense he was doing in the refinery with World GTL, billion-dollar loss, cost overruns amounting to billions of dollars. They had plans that were supposed to start up in 3, 4 months, 6 months, a year, taking 5 and 6 and 8 years to finish plans and projects. You know how much money that is running? And when you're talking oil investment, you don't count TT dollars, you know. It's us dollars. Us dollars you're costing. So that was because you have the wrong people. And so we have to, sisters and brothers, we know the problems. We need fair share. We need equity, we need policies that are not discriminatory, that policies that encourage small businesses, because Anthony Sapga, Hefe of Ansa Makal, started off as a small businessman selling cloth out of a suitcase, right? And lots of other businesses started off small. So the issue is that, but they got breaks that you're not getting. And we have to address why doesn't the banking system and the financial system support a lot of small businesses in this country. And farmers don't get breaks. Lloyd Best used to say, you see, the culture of banking in this country is to support the merchant class, because you can, who are the traditional business people in the country, import, export, support them. Because you see, if you buy a motor car and you need to borrow money from the bank can repossess a motor car. They wouldn't lend money to the farmer because they can't repossess the tomato. So the culture of the bank is not to lend money to the farmers. And yet in this country, we have billions of dollars lying idle in the banks. Because that's why interest rates are so low. Nobody is borrowing. So there are billions of dollars in excess liquidity in the banks. Yes, you have pension plans, you have NIB, you have mutual funds, and nowhere for those financial institutions to place their money because interest rates are low. There's nothing to lend, nobody to invest money in because there's no business activity. What we need to do, I know I'm up to my 15 minutes, so I'll just take 2 more minutes. We need to have a plan for good governance in Trinidad and Tobago. We have to have a plan for good governance. And part of that plan is what we started on Sunday last, and representatives of your association were there and spoke. Your PRO spoke at our assembly on Sunday, the MSJ Assembly of Citizens Empowered. We had Section 34, Brother Rudal was there, Brother Bikram was there, our brother was there as well, and a number of you were present. And at our assembly, one of the things that coming out of that, we are going to be, as MSJ, articulating specific proposals now. Because people are saying to us, well, David, you're talking about you're against bad governance and you're for good governance. Well, what do you mean by good governance? What are the specific things? I'm just going to share with you one or two things this afternoon. First of all, we need to have a policy for the allocation of resources in this country that are fair and equitable. You see, local government coming up, and I was listening on 102 as I was driving up. The other a meeting, a community outreach session in Diego Martin, and people were complaining about the lack of resources to Diego Martin and how CPEP contracts, I heard Mackie and others talking about CPEP contracts not being fairly allocated and so on and so on. What we need to do is to have a decision, policy decision, that for every community in this country, 25,000 people, let's just say 25,000 people constitutes a community, and the CSO with their recent census has mapped the country very carefully and have all the details of where people live, the age, the gender, the incomes of every community in this country. So the information is there, easily available on a good computer database. Every community of 25,000 people, for argument's sake, must have the following facilities: primary school, a health center, recreation facilities, and so on. Minimum set of standards below which no community must fall. And therefore, when you look at all the communities throughout the country, resources on a national basis must be allocated in such a way that priority will be given to those communities that do not have that minimum set of requirements. So nobody could say now that money going to this constituency because the government is UNC and they want to support their people, or the government is PNM and they're supporting there, the government is MSJ, because you have to look out for that too, brother. Yeah? That is MSJ and the MSJ is supporting its people. It must never be like that. It must never ever be perceived or real that any party in government is favoring its people, because a government is there to serve every single citizen of Trinidad and Tobago without fear or favor. That is justice. And so resources must be allocated by right, on the basis of a defined set of requirements for every single community. And if 10 communities need a health center and you only have money to build 2 this year, then it must be said we're building 2. And next year we're building another 2. So in 5 years we're going to build 10. So everyone knows that they will wait their turn, not because they're being discriminated against, but because they're certain that within 5 years their health center will be built. That's what we have to do. We have to be able to harness the resources of this country into a national infrastructure, or rather a national development fund, which the government will then pay interest as bonds from borrowing from the national fund. So all that excess liquidity could go into this national development fund, and interest will be paid to the lenders or the depositors into that fund. And money would then be managed not by the Minister of Finance, not by the Cabinet, but by a civil society board. So that people know that we are managing our own money. It ain't leaving up to a politician to decide how they want to spend that money. And then we prioritize roads, infrastructure for drainage, all up on the northern range. When the flooding was taking place, I walked up Rich Plain and La Puerta and places like that, and you're seeing that they need to have dry rivers, because they're dry in dry season, eh? But when the rain comes, of course, those in Jamaica we used to call them gullies, those little riverbeds and so on will overflow with water and wash away people's homes. So you need to put in those dry rivers and proper culverts and so on. And those things can be built by members of your association. So that if you have a small builder in Caranage or in Rich Plain, that area, then those are the small builders that should get the jobs in those communities. And one could do that in a fair and equitable way so that we could strengthen the capacity of those communities. And CPEP and URP, my respectful view, ought not to be politicized, where you have a contractor who get the contract because he in the party and he get 10. And then somebody who had, because their party lost, lose 3. No. You see those things, they should be turned into cooperatives, in my respectful view. Community cooperatives. So you're now developing a sense of ownership and pride, so the workers not just going to work and working at 3-4 hours and then they go home and so on and getting paid, but they now own those businesses. So we're inculcating business culture in many more people. And then they could be given the responsibility for doing some of the small projects and then maintaining the schools and the community centers and the recreation grounds. Because when people in the community maintain those things, they own it. And therefore they'll take pride in it, and there wouldn't be any kind of vandalism and so on and so on. And those jobs will be sustainable because maintenance is something, as you know, has to be done all the time. You can't just build a building and leave it so. You have to maintain it. That's ongoing. So that's a sustainable activity for communities in UR. And then it's developing more skills because people have to be trained in all of the crafts and so on. And then they may start up their own small businesses and become members of your association. So you see, I want to get more members for you as well, right? These are some of the things that we need to do. And there are many, many other proposals, but we're going to unveil some of them as time goes on, because we have to talk not only about what is bad in terms of governance in this country, and a lot is bad. We have to talk about building a consensus towards getting good governance. Because quite honestly, we have changed party time and time and time again. Go through the history, 1981 elections. The reason why ONR didn't sweep the polls then was because Eric Williams passed away. George Chambers, everybody said, give Georgia a chance, right? And Chambers won and so on. So we had a new prime minister in 81. 86, a new prime minister, new party, Robinson and the NER. 91, old party, PNM, new faces, Patrick Manning. 1995, new party, UNC, new Prime Minister, Basdio Pandey. Then 2001, you had the PNM and Manning coming back in the 1818, and then they won the elections in 2002. 2007, they won again. 2010, you had the partnership, new Prime Minister, Kamala Prasad Bisesa. So we're changing parties from 19 and Prime Ministers from 81 to now, back and forth, but we in the desert, in the wilderness, when Moses took his people out of Egypt and they wandered around in the wilderness because they couldn't find the promised land. For years they wandered around. It took Joshua to take them out. Took Joshua to take them out. And so what we have to recognize is not that we need an individual called Joshua now. What we need to realize is that unless we change the system of government in this country, we could go back to whichever party. It could be MSJ, it could be PNM, it could be whoever wins the next elections. Unless we change the system and put in place new arrangements for changing the relations of power between elected and elector, between governor or government and governed. We have to change that relationship of power. Unless we do that, we will always have injustice and discrimination in Trinidad and Tobago. And that is what the MSJ is about. Let us build a consensus on how we could change that relationship of power to put power in the hands of people so that we can, in fact, achieve the kind of Trinidad and Tobago that we all long for and that we all deserve, and which is bountiful land of ours, has more than enough resources to ensure that every single citizen of Trinidad and Tobago enjoys a standard of living and quality of life second to none in this globe called the world. And that is what we are about, that fight for justice, but we have to change the system to achieve that. And to change that system, we need to get the consensus of all of us as to what is wrong with it and what are the ways in which we can change it. Because, mark my words, simply staining our finger and putting an X on the ballot will not result in new governance. We have changed faces and we'll get X